Good day, everyone. Presenting here our research study entitled The Road to Arrest a Text Analysis Centralizing on Intergroup Contact Using Relative Deprivation Theory. Prepared by Mr. Fritz Latagan, Ms. Lannah, Hareille Saldaña, and yours truly, Eden Pagay. In the introduction, first thing we should know is the real meaning of the religion and marriage for us to give an insight of what interreligious marriage is. Religion: it provides a way of life of an individual. It teaches doctrine that guides the individual to live righteous lives, where it suggested customs and values that impact essential decisions such as choosing a spouse according to Fishman 2010. While marriage means a union of two people or a couple regulated by the laws, rules, beliefs, and attitudes. The definition of Siwanet et al. 2017 about interreligious marriage is that it is a marriage between persons of differing religions. Moreover, as soon as states that interreligious marriage emphasizes a difference of belonging to a group, first, Forsyth described group as two or more individuals connected by a social relationship. A subjective identification of oneself as part of the group ranges from a minimal criterion such as the same taste of music to shared firm beliefs, according to Bohm et al. 2018. In knowing deeper interreligious marriage, there are many definite examples of it. One of these is the literary text entitled Road to Ras Asan, where Catholic and Muslim couples unites. The text analysis spins around the relationship between two groups incited by interreligious marriage concerning the literary text belongingness to the bride's family, the out group, and the in group, which is the other's family. It is a basis for group identification. Furthermore, this research argues that Muslims in the story are at disadvantage relative to the outgroup during the intergroup contact, and this perceived disadvantage consequently induced negative sentiments towards the other group. The objective of this study is to analyze the literary text which focuses on the interreligious marriage and aims to identify some lines from the text and discuss that proves Muslims' disadvantaged position in the story and the negative repercussions that emerge from this interplay using the relative deprivation theory. As well as this study was conducted to contribute to literature for these are few studies who are focusing on interreligious marriage between Muslims and Catholics.
Okay, so for the methodology, the theoretical lens employed in this study is the relative deprivation theory. Relative deprivation theory was used to analyze the literary text. It stems from a collaboration of Smith and colleagues' meta-analysis research work and a theoretical review paper of Figueredo et al. Smith et al. Suggests that relative deprivation is an explanation for social behavior. It posits a subjective state that shapes emotions, cognition, and behavior. Moreover, it is the judgment that one is worse off compared to the other. It links the individual with the interpersonal and intergroup levels of analysis. However, in reviewing the short story, the theory is utilized to analyze the nature of the intergroup phenomena. So for the key points. The first key point is comparison must be made by an individual or groups with other individuals or groups as well. Then, comparison must induce consciousness towards the in-group in recognizing their position as disadvantageous. To further discuss this concept, the key point states that an assessment should be carried out in which one's in-group discerns a situation as unfavorable towards its part. This notion of a comparative disadvantage must come from the individuals directly, as stated by Smith et al. Comparison is integrated into this discourse domain because it allows one's in-group to evaluate their situation parallel to the out-group. This key point serves as a guiding principle to determine and discuss certain lines from the text to validate that Muslims are at a disadvantaged state during the intergroup contact. Furthermore, assuming that group disadvantage exists, This is labeled by Runciman as group relative deprivation or GRD, or fraternal deprivation. This GRD classification is associated with attitudes and behavior of the in-group towards the out-group. The second key point, the disadvantaged position must be seen as unfair. The perceiver thinks that his or her in-group deserves better and develops feelings of resentment. Moreover, feelings of dissatisfaction and deprivation may also lead to conflict. So, relative deprivation theory as employed in the story. The first key point is a guiding principle to determine certain lines from the text to validate that Muslims are at a disadvantaged state during the intergroup contact. The second key point will aim to demonstrate negative repercussions from the intergroup contact due to the disadvantaged position of the Muslims in the story.
So for the result of the text analysis using the relative deprivation theory, we have established two central themes. The first one is in-group disadvantage relative to the Catholic out-group, and under this we have two sub-themes. The first one is an individual makes a comparison with another group. So this study focuses on intergroup relations, so the comparison must be between groups. So in the story, the comparison was made possible because there were two groups presented by the author, the in-group and the out-group, the Muslim in-group and the Catholic out-group. So the in-group here pertains to the group in which the individual belong. Since the story uses first-person point of view, we are getting first-hand insights from the author. Hence, in this case, the individual pertains to the author, and along with her, the groom and other members identify themselves as Muslims, hence the name Muslim in group. Then the out group pertains to the group in which the individual does not belong. So we can categorize the bride's family or the Catholics in the story in this classification. Next is the left box implies that there is this belief of the in-group of exhibiting respect and fair treatment of both parties towards each other. However, this belief was not demonstrated in this particular situation during the wedding preparations. So highlighting the expected word in the left box, this conveys that there is an anticipated outcome by the in-group. However, this outcome was not seen in the actual situation. So this difference between the expected outcome and the real situation paved the way for comparison to happen. So it was the author comparing or contrasting her in-group situation relative to the out-group. Then comparison was done spontaneously because there was no goal to be accomplished, and comparison was easily constructed due to the contact of groups as families in the matrimonial ceremony. And then according to the relative deprivation theory outlined by Smith and colleagues 2012, comparison is classified under intergroup level, particularly on the type wherein the individual compares his or her in-group with the out-group. So even though an individual conducted the comparison, in this case, it was the author who conducted the comparison, she was still able to represent or to compare her in-group's situation as a whole and contrast it to the out-group. So the comparison still happened between groups conforming to the um, focus of this study, which is intergroup relations. The second sub-theme is the in comparison induces consciousness towards the in-group and recognizing their position as disadvantageous. So the two groups in the story were directly involved as families in the matrimonial ceremony. So this calls for them to have a positive mutual relationship. However, as stated in the previous theme, the belief of the author, which was to have fair treatment and respect of both parties towards each other, was not exhibited in the situation which prompted comparison to happen. Because what happened was impolite actions and disrespectful deeds were done toward the in-group during the pre-wedding events, and this motivated them to recognize or acknowledge their disadvantaged position, or they recognized that there was something wrong with their state in the situation. So highlighting the underdog in the line, this implies that there is a disadvantage with regards to the state of the author's family. So in the comparative perspective of the author, she deduces that the situation conforms to the out-group's interests, leaving the in-group to be at a disadvantaged state in the situation. So this perceived group disadvantage is labeled by Runciman as group relative deprivation or fraternal deprivation. The second central theme is repercussions from in-group disadvantage. And again, we have two sub-themes under this central themes. So the first one is the disadvantaged position of the Muslim in-group is unfair. So now we know that, or the author has deduced that the situation conforms towards the outgroup's interest. This disadvantaged position of them is unfair because the outgroup now has more influence and authority over the wedding arrangements and ceremonial affairs, and as a result the in-group is subordinate relative to the outgroup, so leaving the in-group no participation in the wedding preparations. So the second sub-theme is that negative sentiments from in-group disadvantaged position. So this left box contains the sentiments or the situations from the story that convey that there was feelings of resentment. There were negative sentiments, particularly feelings of resentment, that emerged from this in-group disadvantaged position, and this was manifested towards the outgroup. And then for the conclusion, the the findings have addressed the objective of this study, which was to analyze the text using relative deprivation theory. And the theme labeled as Muslim in-group disadvantage relative to Catholic out-group attests to the thesis statement that the Muslims in the story are put at a disadvantage relative to the out-group. In the second key point, referring to the methodology portion, there is a statement there that says that conflict may arise due to feelings of dissatisfaction and discontent. However, there was no identified textual evidence to support that conflict between the groups was exhibited in the story. But despite this, the researchers still validated the claim of of the study that negative sentiments toward the outgroup emerged from the disadvantaged position of Muslims in the story. So the findings that support this claim are seen in the theme labeled as repercussions from in-group disadvantage. And on the greater societal context, the results denote that opinions of the family members are considered to be of particular significance in Filipino marriage traditions. So that is all. Thank you.